What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have another album review for you. Once again, this one is brought to us courtesy of Screaming Toilet. Again, fun site, lots of cool blogs, reviews, movie reviews, and show reviews, even toys, and all sorts of crazy shit on this site. Definitely check it out. There's a link below. It should satisfy the pop culture junkie within you. So today, I am going a bit off of my musical beaten path, definitely out of my wheelhouse. I'm reviewing Nortt's album Galgenfrist. This is a reissue of an album he put out in 2007. This comes out on Avant-Garde Music. This is definitely different from me. This is a one-man blackened funeral doom band, or as he describes it, and I'm going to read it, pure depressive black funeral doom. Yeah, so this is going to be really upbeat and super enlightening, and you'll be full of nothing but positive thoughts after listening to this. Now, all the songs are in Danish, as well as the titles, so I apologize to the entire country of Denmark for probably my butchering of the language. So I also looked up the translations, but I'm going to attempt to pronounce these. So it kicks off with the title track, Galgenfrist, which means reprieve, I believe. And it's an intro. It's very long-winded for an intro. It's almost 4 minutes. And honestly, like, the feel I got from it was more of a suspense thriller rather than a horror movie. It's mostly just layered synths and just kind of deep noises going on in the background. It's really kind of hard to describe. You just kind of have to hear it. Now, I'm going to skip ahead in terms of the fact that this album has both an intro and an outro, and together they clock over 7 minutes, I think. And with the length and the breadth of these songs, I really don't think they were needed, because these songs spend a lot of time building this cold, dirgy, depressive atmosphere anyway, so they're kind of unnecessary. Now, the first real track on here is Til Grevens V, which means to the grave we. This is, I don't know, it's less of a song than it is a giant soundscape of deep, dark synths and interesting background noise. Like, the drums are very spaced out in this, and they sounded like they're recorded inside of an old warehouse. And you get sparing riffs here and there, but it's mostly about the keys and the atmosphere that it builds. It really has kind of a cool atmosphere, but I really wouldn't say necessarily it's a song as much as it's a really cool soundscape. Like, it would work really well as a movie score, but not necessarily something I would jam all the time. But mostly like just something like, oh, if this popped up in a movie, this would really work to accentuate a part, especially if it was a horror flick or suspense flick, or actually no, probably just those two. Now, there's some interesting layered noises in there, not necessarily just synths or pianos or guitars. There was a part where it sounded like they were dragging something across the thick gauge piano strings on a piano. I don't know what it was, but it was a really interesting noise in the background that, again, built a lot of atmosphere. And that's pretty much what all this music is about, is atmosphere. Now, the one standout I'd say in here is Off Dod. I hope I pronounced that right, which is To the Dead. This one actually has more of a sense of musicality about it. And there's actually some distinct riffs on it, a really cool dissonant part that I really liked. And this is where, since all the instrumentation came through, this is where I think the production I could actually talk about, because going for what they were going for, I think they did a really good job with this. It has all the grim, cold atmosphere you'd want in black metal, but it has the immensely depressive, dirgy qualities of funeral doom. And Funeral Doom isn't necessarily in my wheelhouse either. There's only like one Funeral Doom band that I listen to that I can name off the top of my head, and that's Ahab. And this is even more, funeral-y than them. Those guys write some pretty killer jams. And these guys, it's more or less like listening to one of those haunted house tapes or CDs you got in Halloween stores to build up all the creepy atmosphere when you're giving out candy to the kids, which is cool and all. I mean, it's great for the effect, but I needed a little bit more musicality. But this song, Off Dud, actually has a lot of that, and I really did like that. So there was a break around the 4-minute mark of that song that transcended it into almost sci-fi-ish keys. Like, parts of it kind of reminded me of some of the score of Blade Runner, or like if Tangerine Dream was insanely doomy and evil. Now, another song I'd like to bring up is Over mit Lig. Once again, I think that's how you pronounce it. Translated, it means wrote my play. Now, this one I thought was interesting because it honestly really didn't need a lot of metal elements to it, because I thought the synths were really good on this. And I do like dark synth music. I mean, I grew up in the 80s. There were synths everywhere. And I like stuff like Survive, the guys that did the soundtrack for Stranger Things. And I love the scores of John Carpenter flicks, and that's what this felt like. And when they added the guitars and the drums, which, granted, those drums are way back in the mix, and that snare hits like once a week. It's barely there anyway. But it honestly felt like an unnecessary layer because they were really conveying everything about this grim atmosphere that they have in just mostly just the synths and these gurgled vocals, which honestly I think the vocals are pretty good on this. Like, they're very leaning towards death metal for parts. There's a nice kind of gurgle to Nortt's voice, but it's very sparing. There's very little in the way of vocals or even lyrics when it comes down to this, because I had to look up translations. And of course all of it is very depressing and such, but the synths and the keys and even the piano parts are what really stood out on this album to me. Like, those are the most melodic and most memorable passages on this entire album across all these tracks. So now another problem I had with this album is some of the song lengths. It takes a long time for these songs to build up to their very, very depressing ending. And on this, with Over mit Tig and Havet Hinsides Havet, I think that's, once again, I suck at Danish. Who knew? Which translates to Sea Beyond the Sea. Both of those songs are over 10 minutes long and back-to-back and convey this very, very similar depressive mood. And it almost tracks as one big, long track. And when it comes down to longer tracks, I need them to move. And once again, this is why Funeral Doom and probably depressive black metal aren't really my thing. I need a little bit more energy. It can't all be this sullen, bleak, slow-moving thing, which I like elements in this. It's just elements, though. Not entire songs, really, because these things run a little long. Like, Over mit Lig has a particularly long outro, which is pretty much just noise. There's a layered background noise to almost all of these tracks that kind of sounds like someone recorded wind going through a long tunnel. It's cool. I mean, it kind of adds another dense layer to it, but this isn't really something I would jam in the car or put on at a party. Well, no, I might do that just to fuck with people, but it just labors the point too long. So I might not be the best judge in terms of this style of music. It's, not necessarily my wheelhouse. I prefer black metal like Marduk, Mayhem, Dark Throne, or even Enslaved. But this is just a little off the beaten path for me, but I wanted to give it a try. I wanted to check out something definitely different in terms of metal, something I usually don't listen to, and I wanted to see what it was all about. And, this may not have had the biggest impact on me. I'm only going to give it 2 stars, and most of those 2 stars go towards the keys and pianos and layering on this. The metal elements almost kind of take a backseat to those in a lot of spots. I mean, I would definitely jam another album by them just to see if I can get something else out of it. But it didn't really have the biggest impact on me, but there were some things I really came out of this enjoying. So, if you like the review, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe. We do shit like this all the time. Tons more reviews coming. Catch you guys later.